Rain slaps the pavement outside St. Mary's Hospital as Ava Collins steps through the sliding doors with a thin paper envelope and a cheap bag pressed to her chest. Her scrubs cling to her arms and the chill climbs under her skin while the parking lot glows with smeared reflections. She keeps walking because there is nothing left to say. The night deepens and the wind pushes hard across the roof when the first MH-60M Black Hawk arrives, a dark shape from the 160th Special Operations Aviation Regiment. Floodlights rake the rooftop landing zone, and the wheels carve sheets of water into rolling fans. A second aircraft slips into position, and the rotor thump stacks into a steady, physical beat in her ribs. Operators drop by fast rope, boots finding wet concrete in short controlled steps. Their helmets carry headsets, and the team moves with the kind of urgency that does not waste motion. Security vests and hospital staff freeze along the edges, phones lifting almost in unison. The intercom cuts through the weather with a flat, clear call for Doc Collins, repeated once for confirmation. The sound rides under the rotors, so the words land clean on the rooftop and drift down the stairwell to the emergency entrance. Someone points toward the street as Ava turns back into the wash of white light. A team member gestures her forward without flair or ceremony. Eyes steady, hands open. No salute. No theater. Another operator scans the perimeter and keeps a path clear while the floodlights paint long shadows across the wet railings. The aircraft hold in a controlled hover, and the message is simple enough that no one argues. Phones keep filming, but the people holding them stop talking. The call for Doc Collins is already moving through the building as nurses and residents press against the glass doors and try to understand what they are seeing. They pick her out in the rain by the way the team pivots toward her and by the way the intercom voice confirms the identification. Morning light settles over St. Mary's Hospital as Ava Collins starts another long shift in the emergency department. She moves from room to room with steady pace, taking the dirtiest tasks and the heaviest lifts while others rotate away. The board fills, and she keeps the line moving. Her prep cart looks more like a frontline kit than a tidy shelf. Large-bore IV catheters sit beside pressure dressings, airway adjuncts, tape, and labeled checklists that she updates before the rush. The layout is simple and fast because old habits from being a hospital corpsman never really fade. Younger staff wave off her quiet suggestions and tell each other she is just a nurse. Ava lets it pass and fixes what she can reach, like a loose oxygen line or a charting error that would slow a transfer. She prefers small corrections over long debates. Dr. Mark Harrington watches her closely and reads her initiative as risk. He is proud of his service in the department and wary of any hint of overreach during busy hours. He calls the shots and expects the team to follow clean lines. In the locker room, a veteran nurse closes her own door and catches a glimpse inside Ava's. There is an old patch on the top shelf with Naval Special Warfare and Task Unit 9 worn into the fabric. No one asks, and Ava does not offer more than a nod. Between codes, she buys a hot meal for a patient who would otherwise go home hungry. After the final bed cleanup, she stays behind to scrub a suction canister and wipe down a monitor so the next shift can start clean. At 2:30 p.m., she steps outside and chooses the long walk rather than pour money into a failing car. On busy afternoons, she seems to predict trouble before the monitor does. She notices a shallow breath pattern, a graying lip, or a rising work of breathing, and moves a respiratory cart without fanfare. It is practice and pattern recognition, not magic. The day winds down, and the hallway hum softens to a steady buzz. Ava locks her cart, checks the labels, and closes her locker with a soft click. The patch in the corner stays hidden as she blends back into the crowd and feels smaller than the storms that wait ahead. Evening crowds press into St. Mary's Hospital as a medic unit rolls in with a pale patient gasping for air. The board flags suspected overdose, and the monitor rhythm drifts toward pulseless electrical activity. The room tightens as hands reach for carts and suction. Dr. Mark Harrington steps to the foot of the bed and readies defibrillator pads. His jaw is set and his voice carries the strain of a long shift. The charge climbs while the waveform stays organized without a shockable pattern. Ava Collins slides to the head of the bed and centers her hands at the jaw. She lifts with a clean jaw thrust and clears thick secretions with suction until the chest rises easier. She places an oropharyngeal airway, reassesses, and keeps a nasopharyngeal airway ready. She seals the bag valve mask with a steady grip and sets a controlled rate. A nurse watches the chest rise while another checks end tidal carbon dioxide. Oxygenation nudges upward as the room finds a shared rhythm. Ava calls for epinephrine on the clock and asks for a rhythm check at the right interval. She signals for reversible causes from the H&T list while a teammate checks glucose, temperature, and access. Another pair secures 2 large bore IVs and draws blood. Perfusion creeps back in color and pulse pressure. The monitor settles and the respiratory effort eases under bagging. A stunned quiet fills the space between alarm tones. Dr. Mark Harrington breathes out and then locks on Ava with a hard focus. He states that protocols were crossed and that authority must be respected in this room. He makes the termination call and turns away to manage the next order. Ava does not argue. She wipes the patient's face, sets the suction back, and tells the charge nurse what was given and when in a calm handoff. She steps out as the team continues care. At 7:40 p.m., she packs a cheap bag from her locker and tucks her badge behind the envelope. Her shoes squeak on the hall floor as she reaches the exit. The sliding doors open to heavy rain. Cold air hits her face and she pulls the bag close. The parking lot glows with streaks of red and white in the puddles. She walks into the weather while the hospital hum continues behind glass. Rain hammers the city as a multi-car pileup near the Naval Base Access Road sends sirens toward St. Mary's Hospital. 12 critical trauma patients arrive in waves, and the triage nurse assigns reds and yellows while stretchers stack by the doors. Monitors alarm in a chorus that never quite clears. Rooms fill and hallway bays open as teams scramble for space. IV pumps multiply. Imaging requests backlog, and transport times stretch with wet roads and limited ambulances. The blood bank reports type O, negative, running low, and warns of rationing. Dr. Mark Harrington works 2 airways while tracking a third on the board. On patient 2, a chest tube placed at the 4th or 5th intercostal space along the anterior to mid-axillary line fails to vent because of malposition, and hypoxia deepens. 3 nurses reposition, secure the dressing, and restore ventilation with focused, practiced hands. Documentation lags behind reality as staff juggle drips, labs, and bed assignments. A clerk reads names for transfer while a resident checks return calls from trauma surgery that have stacked up. The printer spits labels that no one has time to peel. An exhausted veteran nurse says there is no one left to call. Then another voice admits the one person they lost today was Ava Collins. The camera cuts to Ava walking home in hard rain with her bag held close. Then cuts back to the emergency department where a portable X-ray slides past a gurney. The gap she leaves is a quiet space where no one stands. Commands stay clipped and low as teams keep moving. Bag mask ventilation holds steady. Chest rise evens out, and a pressure bag hisses on a unit of blood. A runner checks on the O-negative cooler and comes back shaking his head. By 9:10 p.m., the corridor is lined with gurneys and folded blankets. The lights reflect off wet boot prints as another ambulance backs in at the bay. The hum of alarms blends with the steady sound of rain against the roof. 50 kilometers off the coast. A naval special warfare element from SEAL Team 10, Task Unit 9, works inside a steel compartment that is smoky, wet, and cramped. A sudden blast overpressure rips through the space and shrapnel sprays into bulkheads and gear. The deck turns slick as water and oil mix under red utility lights that flicker. 2 operators drop to a knee and then to their backs, with breathing that turns shallow and fast. Cyanosis creeps at the lips, and asymmetric chest rise becomes obvious to anyone close enough to see it. Breath sounds fade on one side while perfusion falls by the minute. Their corpsman, HM1 Daniel Reyes, is pinned under a toppled case of equipment that jammed across the deck. He tries to reach his bag. but the angle locks his hip and shoulder against the grate. He stays conscious and works the march sequence by voice as best he can. Lieutenant Michael Dalton takes command on the radio and keeps traffic short. He orders a two-man team to secure hazards, kill unnecessary power, and brace the load that trapped Reyes before the next roll. He calls airway, breathing, and circulation checks in rotation, while the team times movements to the heave of the hull. A teammate leans close to patient one and notes jugular venous distension in the dim light. Another marks decreased breath sounds and poor chest expansion with a gloved hand. The words tension pneumothorax pass between them as a fact, not a theory. Dalton keeps his voice steady and asks for status updates every 30 seconds. Reyes reports he cannot reach the most critical patients and cannot move without help. Dalton routes a request through proper channels to locate Doc Collins and push her to the target vessel. Damage control clamps a small leak and shoves the heavy case enough to ease the strain on Reyes. The compartment stays noisy and wet, but the worst hazards come under control. The clock keeps its slow pressure as minutes pass. Breathing stays labored, and perfusion worsens despite position changes in oxygen. The team clears space for an intervention that cannot start until the right hands arrive. Dalton gives a clean order to find Doc Collins and hold the compartment. At 9:45 p.m., the radio crackles and then steadies under his hand. The camera holds on the wounded operator whose chest barely moves against the noise, the rhythm stalling as the ship rolls. The section cuts on that sound and the thin rise of breath. Rain runs off the brim of her hood as Ava Collins moves along the sidewalk outside St. Mary's Hospital. The city feels blurred, all tail lights and puddles, while the ache of the last hour sits heavy in her chest. Her phone vibrates in her pocket and she stops under a flickering streetlight. The voice is clipped and calm. A coordination line from Naval Special Warfare that confirms her identity and requests immediate tasking in support of Task Unit 9. The wording is clean and official, the kind of language that routes through proper channels and leaves no doubt about authority. It makes clear that her credentials come from service, not employment. Ava listens without interrupting and draws a slow breath that steadies her shoulders. Memory lands like a checklist. The hours she kept as a hospital corpsman and the way training turns chaos into steps. Rain taps harder and she lets the old habits surface. Her answer is simple and leaves no room for drama. The acceptance carries the quiet meaning of send the aircraft, and she turns back toward the hospital side street that serves as a secure pickup. Minutes feel wider as she starts moving with intention. Wind pushes at her scrubs and the bag thumps her hip as the rain soaks through. The humiliation of the day slides back a notch and duty fills the space it leaves. She keeps walking, steady and human, ready to work when wheels touch down. Floodlights turn the rooftop into a bright island as two MH-60M Black Hawk helicopters from the 160th Special Operations Aviation Regiment arrive under cleared coordination. Wheels roll through pooled rain and throw fans of water across the landing zone. Rotor wash shivers the railings and drives mist in hard sheets. A small element fast ropes to the deck and moves with compact efficiency. Helmets tilt, headsets live. Hands point to corners that need to be secured. The line keeps tight spacing and avoids wasted motion. Intercom traffic cuts clean under the noise and carries a clear request for Doc Collins by name. The call repeats once for confirmation, and the team shifts to make space near the stairwell door. Hospital security vests hold a perimeter and keep access routes open without drama. A non-commissioned officer steps forward with measured pace and holds a pristine Naval Special Warfare Task Unit 9 patch in a gloved hand. The gesture reads as recognition and summons rather than ceremony. There is no salute, only professional urgency set to the steady thump of the rotors. Ava Collins reaches the group in soaked scrubs and soft hospital shoes that slip on the wet paint. She accepts the patch with a nod and a breath that steadies her shoulders. Staff on the roof and at the emergency entrance stare as the name on the fabric lands. Operators guide her toward the nearest cabin door, while another pair scans the skyline and checks the edges of the landing zone. Intercom voices confirm the pickup, and the side door slides shut with a clean mechanical sound. The aircraft lifts smoothly and holds formation over the hospital lights. Phones keep filming for a beat, but the rooftop falls quiet except for the rain. The city drops away beneath the aircraft as the floodlights fade to a gray glow. Ava buckles in and faces forward, eyes on the work waiting beyond the shoreline. Red utility lighting bathes the MH-60M Black Hawk cabin while headsets click live on intercom. The air vibrates with a steady rotor rhythm and the deck hums under boots and gear. Ava Collins settles into a seat and steadies her breath. Lieutenant Michael Dalton gives a concise update as the map board glows on a kneeboard. A Naval Special Warfare element from SEAL Team 10, Task Unit 9, has 2 operators with suspected tension pneumothorax and HM1 Daniel Reyes pinned under equipment. The window is measured in minutes, not seconds. Ava unzips a compact roll and checks her minimal field kit. Large bore needles in sizes 14 to 10 gauge sit beside a one-way valve. Chest tubes from 32 to 36 French. Tape and gauze, all laid out for speed. She counts gloves and a small sterile setup and then closes the kit. Rolls are confirmed with short nods that need no extra words. Dalton holds tactical command and keeps the radios clean, while Ava owns medical decisions the moment her boots hit the deck. A soft acknowledgement moves through the element, and they call her Doc without ceremony. Memory edges in and leaves a small mark called Iron Ridge. She remembers long hours, hard choices, and the first time she learned to slow her hands so fear could not rush them. Leaving the battlefield never meant leaving the people who call when it counts. She rehearses steps in her head until they feel like muscle. Needle decompression at the 4th or 5th intercostal space along the anterior to mid-axillary line, over the superior border of the rib. Valve attached. Reassess. Tube thoracostomy with a small incision. Blunt dissection. Finger sweep. Tube in. Secure. Reassess. Cabin noise builds and then settles into a familiar blanket. Coordination with the hospital security desk and air traffic control was handled before wheels up, so no one wastes focus on paperwork. The crew keeps seatbelts secured and checks harness points as the sea takes shape through mist. The coastline fades behind rain as the aircraft banks toward the coordinates. Ava pulls on gloves and leans into the harness, eyes calm and intent. Her mind locks on the march sequence while the rotors keep time for the work ahead. The compartment stinks of smoke and fuel as the team squeezes through a watertight door into a wet, cramped space. Light flickers off steel and water runs across the deck in small rivers. Ava Collins steps in with a small Naval Special Warfare element and takes medical lead while Lieutenant Michael Dalton holds tactical command. She runs a rapid march check while the team secures corners and watches footing. Massive hemorrhage is controlled. Airway threats are noted, and breathing becomes the priority. The deck heaves, so a teammate wedges, chocks, and a lantern to steady shadows. Patient 1 lies cyanotic, with asymmetric chest rise and no breath sounds on the right. Neck veins stand when the ship settles, and perfusion drops fast. Pulse oximetry sits low, and skin feels cool and clammy. Ava assigns roles with short, clear lines. Senior Chief Brooks seals a bag valve mask and sets a steady rate, while another operator clips a pulse oximeter and lays out gear. A third checks end tidal carbon dioxide and calls out numbers between waves. Ava landmarks at the 4th to 5th intercostal space along the anterior to mid-axillary line on the right. She advances a long 14-gauge catheter over the superior border of the rib to protect the neurovascular bundle. A rush of trapped air confirms decompression, and she attaches a one-way valve while color begins to lift. She moves to definitive care with a chest tube-sized 32 to 36 French at the same level. A small skin incision opens the path. Then, blunt dissection with a clamp and a finger sweep confirm pleural entry. The tube slides in and is directed anteriorly for pneumothorax. Then secured with tape and ties and connected to a collection system, the crew rigs on the spot. Timing stays real and tight. Needle decompression takes under 2 minutes with good setup. The chest tube follows in several minutes as the team shields her hands from the roll of the ship and checks breath sounds after each step. Patient 2 shows rising work of breathing and diminished sounds on the left, with less dramatic signs. Ava repeats the sequence with the same landmarks and careful technique as HM. Daniel Reyes is lifted free of the equipment and gives a concise handoff. Brooks keeps ventilation even while another operator tracks oximetry and skin tone. Reassessment never stops. Chest rise balances. Skin warms. And end tidal carbon dioxide trends in a safer direction as pulse oximetry climbs. Lines are secured. Dressings checked. And the deck is cleared of loose metal. Lieutenant Dalton keeps comms short and clean while confirming security and movement routes. With both patients stabilized for transport, he calls extraction and sets the team on the path to the rendezvous. The compartment settles into a working calm as packs are lifted and stretchers roll. Ava wipes her gloves, checks, ties, and rests a steady hand on each patient. Relief is quiet and practical, measured in better numbers and easier breaths. The team moves as one toward the hatch while the radio hisses and the sea thumps the hull. Red utility lighting washes the MH-60M Black Hawk cabin as the team lifts from the ship toward the rendezvous. Headsets stay snug, and the intercom carries a calm report that all hands are accounted for, and both patients are stable for transfer. Seatbelts click, and the litter straps are checked again, while monitors glow steady. Lieutenant Michael Dalton keeps tactical command and trims the radio traffic to what matters. He notes the work done and gives Ava Collins a brief nod that reads as professional respect more than praise. The element settles into the quiet that follows hard minutes. Senior Chief Petty Officer Brooks reaches into a pocket and presses a unit challenge coin into Ava's palm. The gesture is small and private in the tight cabin, the way Naval Special Warfare prefers to say thank you. A soft hooyah moves through the row of helmets and then fades back into the intercom hum. Routing details pass across the net about moving to a Roll 2 or Roll 3 facility depending on landing options. Vitals are called in low voices. Oxygen flow is confirmed, and the tubes are secured with extra tape for the last leg. No one breaks the rhythm with ceremony or speeches because the work is not finished until the handoff is done. Ava answers with the same even tone she used on deck. She frames the night as teamwork and training, and asks that the crew trade lessons when the dust settles. The aircraft banks toward the city lights while the sea turns to a dark strip behind them. The cabin holds to its checklist pace and the minutes stretch without drag. Relief comes as steady breathing, warm skin, and numbers that inch into safer ranges. The team rides the rhythm of the rotors toward shore and the next care, setting up their return to St. Mary's Hospital without spectacle. The MH-60M Black Hawk settles onto the rooftop landing zone under cleared coordination that no one needs to narrate. Wheels roll through pooled rain, and a naval special warfare element moves the litters with steady hands. Headsets glow in the dim, and the intercom traffic stays calm. Hospital security opens the protected route without fuss. The team escorts 2 stabilized patients down the stairwell and into the elevator with monitors beeping at safe intervals. A path clears through the emergency department hallway as wet boots leave clean tracks. Staff cluster along the walls and try to understand what they are seeing. Lieutenant Michael Dalton offers facts in a level voice that travel the length of the corridor. Senior Chief Petty Officer Brooks keeps the movement tight and signals when to resume normal pace. No one raises a hand in salute. Gestures stay small and practical because space is tight and work remains. A medic adjusts an oxygen line and a nurse checks a tube tie with quick fingers. People who mocked Ava Collins earlier let their eyes fall to the floor. A young resident steps forward and asks if she is a combat field medic. The words are careful and quiet and reach only the nearest ears. Ava answers with a few plain lines that center duty and outcomes. She frames the night as the job and not a title. The exchange lands without heat and leaves the hallway in working order. Dr. Mark Harrington stands a few steps away with a chart in his hand. His face holds fatigue and focus as he splits attention between patient care and the memory of his decision. He nods once and returns to orders that need writing. Days later, a formal letter arrives from the hospital board. It carries a full apology and an offer to reinstate with a 6-figure raise and an emergency preparedness role. Ava declines in writing and adds one line about saving lives over seeking titles. Back in the present, she sits in a quiet training room with a small circle of nurses and residents. They ask for airway basics and the march sequence and when to choose needle decompression or chest tube placement. She keeps language clean and sticks to the steps that match real practice. She demonstrates jaw thrust and bag valve mask seal with short corrections. She reviews landmarks at the 4th or 5th intercostal space along the anterior to mid-axillary line and explains why the catheter rides over the superior border of the rib. She ends with a reminder to reassess after every move. Later, she walks to her locker and packs the few things that are still hers. The door closes with a soft click, and the patch on the top shelf stays out of sight. A young physician stops at the threshold and addresses her as Doc with a request to start over. Ava nods and sets a time to teach. She steps into the hallway as monitors resume their steady chatter. The camera trails her past the nursing station, while the emergency department hums like it always does. Late sun warms the sidewalk outside a small cafe as Ava Collins sits with a paper cup and a quiet table. The street sounds are easy, just tires on asphalt and a distant dog. Her shoulders look lighter than the night it all began. A discreet group from Naval Special Warfare approaches with easy posture and no fanfare. They choose the table farthest from the door and keep their voices soft. Traffic passes like a low tide behind them. From a simple case, they present a clean patch that reads Naval Special Warfare, Task Unit 9, Honorary Doc. The stitching catches a thread of light and then settles back into shadow. Ava accepts it with steady hands and lets the moment breathe. She makes clear she will not return to the field yet. She will stand by to teach and support the people who keep showing up when it matters. The group accepts that with the same calm that brought them here. Overhead, 2 MH-60M Black Hawk helicopters bank in low coordinated flight and slide past the block. The maneuver feels like a nod, not a show, and the noise fades as quickly as it arrived. Airspace and local coordination are in order without needing to be said. Ava leans back and watches the sky soften to a pale blue. She thinks about one more person breathing because someone learned to use a bag valve mask the right way. She thinks about a young teammate who will remember landmarks at the 4th or 5th intercostal space and keep a calm hand. The patch sits on the table by her cup as a small promise. Passing skills forward is how a hard night turns into better mornings for strangers. Quiet work can travel farther than any headline. This is where the ask becomes simple and human. If the story moved you, add a comment that says, "I will be kind," and subscribe for more stories of veterans and frontline medics. Consider signing up for certified first aid training so you can help in the minutes that matter. No speeches follow and no cameras crowd the curb. The group thanks her in the way teams do when the job speaks for itself. They head out one by one with the same measured step they brought to the table. Ava slips the honorary patch into her bag and stands to leave. The city feels steady, and her path does too. She turns back to her day with the kind of resolve that looks like kindness in motion. On the way home, she passes a bus stop where a family waits with grocery bags. The breeze smells like rain on concrete, and the streetlights blink on in a slow chain. Somewhere a helicopter heads for training, and the sound rolls over the rooftops like a heartbeat. Floodlights carve the rooftop of St. Mary's Hospital as 2 MH-60M Black Hawk helicopters from the 160th Special Operations Aviation Regiment hold over the landing zone. Wheels throw rain in, bright fans and operators fast rope with tight, practiced movements while security keeps a clean perimeter. Clearance is already handled. The rotor wash is real, and the city blurs beneath the storm. The narration lands fast and clean. Fired at midnight, and the Black Hawks came asking for the nurse. The intercom call threads through the noise and becomes part of the air, asking for Doc Collins by name. No salutes, no spectacle, only precision and urgency measured in steady hands and red beacons. Phones rise along the railings as the camera finds her in the rain with a cheap bag and soaked scrubs. Fired at midnight reads on the thumbnail, and Black Hawks asked, where as the nurse sits under it like a second heartbeat. Why would naval special warfare come for a quiet emergency nurse? The frame holds on her face for a breath, and the cut takes us straight into the story. This brief sets the non-negotiable accuracy points so the script and edit stay correct. Use proper unit names and ranks that match naval special warfare and United States Navy practice. Reference SEAL Team 10 and Task Unit 9, with Lieutenant for the officer, Senior Chief Petty Officer for the senior enlisted, and HM1 for the independent duty corpsman. Identify Ava Collins as a former hospital corpsman who is called Doc in team culture. Keep chain of command consistent with Lieutenant Michael Dalton holding tactical lead while Doc makes medical decisions. Dialogue should be folded into narration and kept sparse and professional. Aviation details must be precise. Aircraft are MH-60M Black Hawk from the 160th Special Operations Aviation Regiment with wheels, not skids. Show fast rope rather than rappel. Intercom for voice under rotor noise. Red utility lighting in the cabin. And never claim a pressurized helicopter cabin. Medical procedures must match real practice and be described in simple, correct terms. For tension, pneumothorax. Perform needle thoracostomy at the 4th or 5th intercostal space along the anterior to mid-axillary line using a long 14-gauge catheter placed over the superior border of the rib to protect the neurovascular bundle. Follow with a chest tube of 32 to 36 French using a small incision. Blunt dissection. A finger sweep to confirm pleural entry. Then secure and connect to an appropriate collection system. Cardiac care must follow advanced cardiac life support. Defibrillation is only for ventricular fibrillation or pulseless ventricular tachycardia and is not used for pulseless electrical activity. Use the H&T checklist for reversible causes and keep timing in minutes, not seconds. Cultural details require restraint and authenticity. Do not show salutes indoors or on a crowded rooftop. Use hoo-yah sparingly and present gratitude with a challenge coin rather than a staged ceremony, keeping body language restrained and sincere. Workflow guardrails protect plausibility. Whenever aircraft appear, imply that air traffic control and hospital coordination are cleared without lingering on paperwork. Avoid invented units, secret techniques, or miracle timing, and keep the team moving with concise commands and clean handoffs. Language choices shape credibility. Use United States rather than abbreviations, and prefer plain words over jargon when possible. Keep tone steady, human, and focused on actions and results. Editorial checks must catch visual and caption errors. Thumbnails and on-screen text should use Black Hawk, fast rope, hospital corpsman, and task unit correctly. Do not use images that show skids, rooftop salute stock footage, or fictional patches that do not match naval special warfare. Precision builds trust with viewers who know the details. Small errors like the wrong landing gear or a made-up procedure will break the spell for informed audiences. If any doubt remains before lock, ask for a quick expert review and adjust. Start with the hook from 00 to 015. Visualize two MH-60M Black Hawk helicopters with wheels throwing rain while operators fast rope. Narration lands fired at midnight and the Black Hawks asked, "Where is the nurse?" Then hold 5 seconds on Ava Collins in the rain to seed the core question. Move into the foundation from 0:15 to 2 minutes. Show Ava underestimated, fixing problems and being told she is just a nurse, while the prep cart hints at former hospital corpsman habits. Close the beat with a one-sentence curiosity gap that asks what happens when the person everyone ignores becomes the person everyone needs. Shift to the ER incident from 2 minutes to 3:30. Keep advanced cardiac life support exact and tight. Jaw thrust, suction, airway adjunct, bag valve mask, epinephrine on the clock, rhythm reassessment. End with a mini cliffhanger as the doors slide to rain and promise that the night is not finished with her. Run the city surge from 3:30 to 4:30. 12 critical trauma cases, strain, type O, negative, and documentation. And a malpositioned chest tube gets corrected. Add a quick recap line that reminds viewers she is gone and the gap is real. Cut offshore from 4:30 to 5:30 with Naval Special Warfare. SEAL Team 10. Task Unit 9. An HM-1 Daniel Reyes pinned. Use the march sequence and language like asymmetric chest rise and decreased breath sounds to frame the stakes. Close with a curiosity gap about who they will call. Deliver the call and oath from 5:30 to 6:30. Then the rooftop pickup from 6:30 to 7:30 with MH-60M, Black Hawk. Wheels, not skids. Intercom clear. No salutes. Insert a 5-second hold on Ava's face before the cabin door closes. Use a gentle reminder, like back to the shipboard compartment now, to re-engage attention. Run the shipboard rescue from 7:30 to 10 minutes with needle thoracostomy at the 4th or 5th intercostal space along the anterior to mid-axillary line. Then chest tube size 32 to 36 French. Preview the next beat without spoilers. Vary sentence length for TTS comfort. Carry the honor moment from 10 minutes to 11 minutes with a challenge coin and a quiet hooyah. Then, hospital recognition from 11 minutes to 12:30. Move to refusal and teaching from 12:30 to 13:30. Close the call to action from 13:30 to 14:30 with 2 soft retention anchors that promise the hospital reversal and the coin moment without hype. This story returns to quiet strength. Ava Collins shows how respect is earned by doing the right thing the right way when the clock feels loud. She carries the calm of a hospital corpsman called Doc into a civilian emergency room and lets the work speak. You saw it in the MH-60M Black Hawk cabin with red lights where checklists came first. You saw it again in a narrow steel space at sea where the march sequence kept fear from running the show. Pressure met process. And process won. Preparation beats ego. A stocked cart. A simple plan. And a habit of checking twice move faster than any speech. Chain of command and clear roles save time because everyone knows who decides what and when. Real training saves lives. Needle first to release pressure. Tube next to keep it down. Reassess again and again. Nothing mystical lives there. Only steps practiced until the hands can do them in bad light. Kindness is not weakness. Buying a meal, cleaning a monitor, or sharing a lesson does not slow a team. It builds the kind of trust that shows up in hard minutes and holds people together. Remember the small signals that mattered. The Black Hawk lift with seatbelts clicked and voices steady. The quiet nod of a challenge coin in a moving cabin. The way a United States Navy element from Naval Special Warfare. SEAL Team 10. Task Unit 9 treated skill as the highest rank in the room. Carry one practical step into your week. Sign up for certified first aid training. Refresh your workplace emergency plan. Mentor a newer teammate and pass on one skill you wish someone had handed you sooner. If this story moved you, add a comment that says, "I will be kind," and subscribe for more stories of veterans and frontline medics. Keep the tone you bring to others warm, modest, and human. Let the big moments grow from small habits done well. This reflection lands in the last minute on purpose. The final image is simple. A calm room, a clean cart, and a checklist ready for the next person who needs help. Quiet hands can make loud results when it matters.